How Putin is building tinpot empire of tyrants to rebuild Soviet Union as he sends troops and tanks to Kazakhstan. Vladimir Putin is constructing a tinpot empire of failing states and ruthless tyrants as he attempts to build new Soviet Union. Russia is cozying up to a rogues gallery of nations as it seeks to expand its influence, today sending in peacekeepers to crush protests in Kazakhstan. Putin's desire to make Russia great again is no secret, and neither is his admiration for the Soviet Union, which collapsed in 1991. Vlad has called the tyrannical bloc's collapse a genuine tragedy, and is believed by some to be seeking to set the map back some 30 years. Ukraine intelligence warned Russia wants to neutralize Western influence and create a trading space, in effect a return to the USSR. Putin has used land grabs along with establishing key alliances with dictators in neighboring states to expand his influence. And it ranges far beyond the original borders of the Soviet Union, also striking up alliances in South America and the Middle East. States who fall out with the West or dictators who need help are seen as an opportunity by Putin. With tanks and troops rolling into Kazakhstan, it brings back echoes of the days behind the Iron Curtain. Here are some of the nations and regions who make up Putin's worrying new empire-esque sphere of influence as he seeks to return to the glory of the USSR. Mass unrest is sweeping through Kazakhstan. Credit, Reuters. Russia has sent in paratroopers and deployed the tanks to the border in a bid to help prop up a puppet government in Kazakhstan. The former Soviet state has been ruled firmly by leader Nursultan Nazarbayev, 81, who still holds on to the reins despite stepping down 3 years ago. Protests have erupted over rising fuel prices, which have then spiraled into wider anti-government marches, turning violent with vandalism and fires. Russia and Kazakhstan have claimed the protests are work of foreign agitators and terrorists. Dozens of protesters have been killed, along with at least 13 members of the security forces, including reports 2 were beheaded. Putin's rapid deployment of troops, however, is seen as him further staking his claim to influence over Kazakhstan. The Kremlin have numerous times in recent years used its power to prop up dictators and regimes, much to the alarm of the West. Russia forces intervened in Syria to prop up Bashar al-Assad. Credit, Getty, contributor. Putin's influence has well expanded into the Middle East as Russia helped prop up the regime of ruthless dictator Bashar al-Assad. It is seen a major victory for the Kremlin as it has given Putin a foothold in the region. Russia deployed troops in 2015 to fight against rebels and ISIS terrorists who rose up in the chaos. It marked the first time since the end of Cold War that Russia went to war outside the borders of the former Soviet Union. Putin's forces were criticized for a brutal campaign that allegedly killed thousands of civilians. But it was ultimately successfully, and Assad remains in power with Putin's hand firmly on his shoulder. Russia helped Belarus put down a wave of protests in 2020. Credit, AFP. Europe's last dictator Alexander Lukashenko was also propped up by Putin as he clung to power in 2020. Much like what we are seeing now in Kazakhstan, Russia supported the tyrant when protests erupted against him after a rigged election. Global pressure was mounting for Lukashenko to step down, but then Vlad stepped in. The former Soviet state is now joined at the hip with its neighboring Russia. Lukashenko and Putin were pictured playing ice hockey together last week as they held further talks. It is believed Putin will use Belarus as a forward base to continue expanding his influence into Eastern Europe and over Ukraine. Vladimir Putin shakes hands with Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. Credit, AP, Associated Press. Venezuela has been seen as a key regional rival of the US, and Russia has been using that to its advantage. The country, ruled by dictator Maduro, who overruled a lost election in 2019, has borrowed billions of dollars from Putin. It has also purchased weapons such as tanks, missiles and aircraft from Russia, and there has even been suggestions Putin could put nukes in Venezuela. Being left almost completely dependent on Russia, Venezuela has provided Putin with a key foothold near the US. Russia has even claimed to have been behind an attempt to stop a US plan to oust Maduro. Putin casts a shadow from Venezuela across the US, and Russia has said it will continue to develop its relationship with them. Vladimir Putin meets with Cuba's former leader Fidel Castro. Credit, AFP, Getty. Since the end of the Cold War, the two countries have remained close, with Russia giving them billions of dollars. fighters walk through the snow in the Donbas, which remains torn apart by civil war. Credit, Reuters. Putin's invasion of western-leaning former Soviet state in 2014 set the tone for Russia's global status for the next decade. Crimea was annexed, and the Donbas region plunged into civil war, with Ukraine fighting against pro-Russian rebels. Russia's actions over the next weeks and months could be a test of mettle for the West, as to whether they would risk war with Putin to save Kiev. Turkmenistan was a member of the Soviet Union until the end of the Cold War. And like many other nations, Putin has offered them his friendship and his support as he expands his influence in Central Asia. Ramzan Kadyrov has a laugh with his pal Vladimir Putin. Credit, AFP. Chechnya is part of Russia, but it is ruled by one Putin's closet allies, the strongman dictator Ramzan Kadyrov.